Assessing and preserving different cultures of play is one of the things we're all about here on the Casting Shadows YouTube channel and podcast. So I once again have a guest. Welcome back to the channel, Chris Crispy from at
Great to be
Table
here.
Runner.
Thank you so much. Had a great time our first conversation, and looking forward to this one. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Now there's pressure.
Now there's pressure. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
On your channel, you have been running a series that we briefly talked about last time, called Fear City.
Yes. Yeah.
Set in the 70s, somewhere in the 70s, mid
1970s, New York City. Yeah. And I came up with the title because of a pamphlet that I found online that was published by the New York Police Department and the New York Fire Department, warning tourists not to come to New York City because of all the nasty things that would happen to you. And the pamphlet actually is called Fear City. And so I thought that would be interesting to just play off that. Yeah.
So this is a series of scenarios or one shots, or it's a campaign. What is it exactly?
Great question. On my channel and a lot of the channels that I'm associated with, we talk about doing one shots as just as practice, trying to refine our ability to be in character, and to improve as role players, both from the game master side and as the player side. We like to do that so far with one shots, but we're gravitating more like multiple one shots, I guess you could call them, where we do a one shot and it does wrap up one particular obstacle, and then either that continues on because the obstacle is a little bigger than was anticipated, or the players are just really into it, and then we go into I've done two of these Fear City one shots. It is episodic, and we like the episodic because it can change up the flavor. What happened between the first one and the second one was interesting too, because in conversation with the players, I asked, well, what other types of gangster style 1970s obstacles would be interesting to you? And they said, well, it'd be great if we could go get a guy, and one of the players said, I really want to go to Miami. And so I thought, okay, this is good. You're giving me enough to go off here, and then I'll come up with an obstacle that scratches those itches. We were really, I would say, Anthony, it was fairly loose. As you've watched the session a few times, I didn't have a whole lot of prep on that. I did do some prep on just improvisation. I looked up a map of Miami so I could figure out where the Miami River was, where the airport is. Google Maps is great for this, especially when running a modern type game, because you can use all those tools. It's really helpful. As I've seen you do in the Call of Cthulhu with the, Massachusetts, turn of the century, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. So how much, you said not much prep. So this is a huge leap forward from our last conversation.
It is. Yeah.
So there were not 16 hours of prep before this.
Well, and yeah, that's right. No, nothing like that. 16 hours of fretting because this was going to be a public game. So there's maybe that, but I didn't have 16 hours of prep. One of the things that I found is that I went from my first attempt at this, Fear City, the first one, where I had done a fair amount of prep. And the problem I was having with that, and the reason why I asked you not to watch that one, but watch the second one, is because by having too much, I found that having too much of, well, this could happen, or this is a different, maybe there's something, a location, like, because I used to prep as, well, I need 4 cool locations and so the problem though is that there was a huge temptation to insert this. Oh yeah, this is where my cool location is going to be. And I didn't do that the second time. The second time I just thought I had an overall starting point, which was well, it was interesting. It wasn't the airport. The starting point really was the marine salvage yard. That was the starting point. And then from there it could go anywhere. So that was the thought, which is allowed more improvisation rather than this lingering, oh yeah, that's where I can insert this, and that's where I can insert that. But by trying to shoehorn things in, at one point in my first attempt, I I had to somehow get an NPC to suddenly make a phone call so that I could, oh yeah, I'm going to do this now. And so then, but the players are like, wait, you just made a phone call. Why do you need another phone call? Are you ratting us out to the, like, what is this? And it didn't really fit. I'll
Right.
be pretty harsh on myself when I go through that one. This one, I didn't do that as much because it was more free form.
Right. You could almost say that by preparing less, we could say it allows for more improvisation, but also requires,
It does. It does.
you know,
That's
operating
very
without a
true.
net. One of the things that I've found in that kind of situation, um, where there are, let's say, multiple locations or multiple NPCs or multiple interesting things that I'm aware of, we can allow them to be triggered. Like someone says, we have to make a phone call. So I'm playing in the 1930s, so that's a lot
The big
more
deal.
complicated than it is in
Yes,
the
it is.
70s, or right.
Yeah.
So they're going to go someplace where there's a telephone,
Hmm.
and then you can be thinking, well, where are they now, and what locations have we already used, and are they going to go there? And you're listening to find out what they're doing, and you're trying to think of the environment that you're going to contribute to. So you're now thinking about two different things, right? So I think they're going to go to a pharmacy because all pharmacies have phone booths in the back in this period, right?
Hmm.
So I'm thinking about how will I make this pharmacy a little different, but what if they go to the pharmacy that we've already been to? And is there something that this could be tied to? There's a whole bunch of things that we could be thinking about, and not thinking about them, I think, is just as challenging as thinking about them. And so we can start making bad decisions.
Oh yeah. Watch my games. It's just bad decision after bad decision. But the beauty of the bad decision model, we can call it that, is that it is the players come away from that thinking, I had more room. There was more room for me as a player to exist in that world, to flesh out the world. Um, and but I also think that it's really important for me. I find it important to try to invent those things, to have it. Okay, this pharmacy is different. What's different about it? Maybe there's one or two things that are different about this. Why, and is that interesting? And if not, and then I'll gauge how much effort I go into it based on what the feedback is from the player in the moment with their character.
Mm.
Are they not interested in interacting with this? Then I'm not going to
Then
try
we
to
can, yeah.
shoehorn the bad drug deal going down in the back room or something like that, because it was just to get the sleeping pills. Like, it was just to get the cough syrup. That's all they wanted.
Right.
And that was something that the player had already invented. So these decisions branch and branch and branch and branch and branch. And sometimes those junctions where a player's decision is branching, it's not a huge trunk. It's just like a little deviation, and then it's back into the main obstacle, the main. So does that make sense, Anthony? I
Yeah,
feel like
it
I'm
does.
I'm talking too much. I should probably be quiet.
On this channel, clearly we do not believe it's possible to talk too much. um, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like how important is this to the player? And I think, and the contribution from the other side of that coin, the other player, the game master player,
Yes. Yeah.
we can burden ourselves too much.
Yes.
And I've met people who, and maybe you'll resonate with this. I've definitely met people who have been prepping everything or as much as they can for so long that discomfort of not having it at their fingertips to draw from makes play not fun.
That's right. Yeah. That
But
I
I've
think that,
also
yeah.
met
Sorry,
people
go ahead.
who have felt freed, freed from the burden, and I think I get
Mhm.
that from you, is
Yeah,
that
that's a fair statement. Absolutely.
you're
It,
playing now more like a player plays.
yes.
They've got their
Yes.
character,
Yes.
and they go into environments, and they're going to contribute some description,
Yes,
and the game master is going to contribute, and the other players are going to contribute, and so we're all just
that's
kind
right.
of playing.
We're
So
all we're all playing, and we're all playing. There's a lot more in common now with what I'm playing as the person running the game than with the person that is playing the game. Like, so the player character and the game master, there's I'm asking them to describe the world as their character sees it, giving them room to do that within the, and then whatever corrections may need to be made are done hopefully subtly, instead of just, well, actually. I'm trying to get away from the, well, no, actually, there's not a Walgreens on the corner. What are you talking about? Um, Instead of doing that, if the player imagines the drugstore, the 24-hour drugstore on the corner, and 24-hour drugstores aren't really a thing in the mid 1970s, am I going to stop the game to? No, it'd be easy to say, or as a player walks up to the front door of it's the door locks. There's a close sign on it. Will
yeah,
open 9 a.m. tomorrow. Like, there's still options for the player. They can still interact with the world how they see fit. Um, but
yeah,
I'm trying to be more like a player as a game master than as the sage on the stage, kind of one step removed. My imagination is done differently than the players are. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to suggest something radical, like there's no difference. There's obviously a difference between what a game master is
right.
doing and what a player is doing as a player character, but there's a
But we
lot
can
of
try and
commonality. You can try
we
to
can try
shrink the
and
gap.
bring the
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah
There always
the
will be a gap,
cognitive
but
load.
yes, exactly. And see, that's been such a liberating experience. Instead of having a game wherein the players just ask question after question after question, and your job and my job as the person is just to, like, I just have to answer all of those questions after another question, another question, and then, I mean, there's I think a better way of doing that than just
Hmm.
having this constant. I feel a little like I'd be quizzed. So am I giving the right answers here? And then players are listening carefully, because what if I contradict myself? Well, then I'm in trouble. Like, I've answered this question. Well, wait a second. You said that there was a,
Yeah, yeah,
now I'm in trouble. And I have to keep all of that in my head all the time, and then do that across time as the game has multiple sessions. Well, what happened 2 months ago? You said that, that, I don't
right,
know, the dungeon doors swung, or they slid instead of swung, whatever it is. Like, there was some detail that a player had asked about that I had answered a month ago. And now
right,
the players are going to remember my answer, but I don't remember what the answer is. Now you
right.
make notes to try to alleviate that, but then it starts, you lose some of the magic. And it's like, I'll just have to go, let me check the minutes from our last meeting and just see what the, like, I'm not, I've read
Yes,
Robert's Rules. It's not a good game. Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Order is not a, no one chooses to sit down and play Robert's Rules.
right.
So anyway,
Who's going to be the
that's
secretary for tonight's game?
exactly. And our
I'll take the
timekeeper
minutes.
is, and
Yep.
the motion is, I need a
Yeah,
seconder for this. Can we, like, I don't want to do that. I want to play something a little more free form. Yeah.
right. And that's the important part, right? There's always going to be some detail that is more important to one or a few people at the table than to
Yes.
the others, and we all remember different things. And of course,
Yes.
memory can change.
It can. And my narration shouldn't be taken as the gospel truth. Uh, I could be, maybe something I've said wasn't 100% accurate. Maybe the what appeared at first glance to be something wasn't. I think that your game, and I understand we're gonna watch a little bit of it. As a horror genre, I would imagine that unreliable narration is a staple of horror genre. It says this, but it's not that. It's the Pickman's model type thing.
Pickman's model.
Using,
Yeah,
yeah, my favorite of all the Cthulhu short stories, or the Lovecraftian short stories. I love
right.
Pickman's model. I love that reveal at the end, and it's, oh, there's something wrong. Oh yeah, I won't spoil it. Of
Yeah.
course, go read the short story. It's not
Yes, go
long.
read it. Yeah, but
It's
it's one of
good.
my
It's
favorites.
really good. Yeah, I like that one the most.
Right. And we've got two threads of that going on with as their sanity begins to erode and as they begin to suffer trauma because of that,
Hmm. Hmm.
then I have to deliver different or deliver information differently to them based on some of those traumatic effects.
Right.
Plus, there are people actively trying to hide their behavior, and there are people who
Yes.
there's layers of things
Yeah.
and interpretation.
We're masters of, what is that word? Obfuscation.
Obfuscation.
Right? We're masters of obfuscation, or that's what we are. Obfuscation masters, not dungeon masters. Yeah.
So with this recent episode,
Mm-hmm.
Fear City Part 2.
Part two.
It's in a sense it's a mission. It's a go get this guy
It
or
is. Yeah. Find the accountant. The accountant's missing. Go get
accountant's
him.
missing.
Bring him back. No one likes a missing accountant when you're a mobster. And, find out where he is. A mysterious phone, exchange, a phone call exchange for a, a place that's has a lot of incongruity to what would be expected from the accountant. So there's something up with that. Go there, find that out, and then go from there wherever it goes. So
Right.
that was it. So, and lots of chance for me to improvisation, just make things up on the fly,
Right.
based on what the players were doing. Now, that said, Anthony, I should be clear that I had as my minimal, excuse me, preparation for the game, I had put down the accountant was being blackmailed by crooked agents. I had that. Like
Sure.
that was the so this wasn't a I had no idea what was going on with the accountant. That was all I had. The accountant's being blackmailed by crooked FBI agents that are trying to retire off the mob's money. Right?
Right.
That was the thing. And then everything else just kind of went from there.
Right. And was it important to you that that reason for the peculiar behavior of the accountant come out, or was it just to help you improvise?
It was to help me improvise, I would say. I wasn't too concerned. At one point, it appeared to me like one of the player characters might just liquidate the accountant, and that was be the end of it, even though he was the victim here as much as anyone.
Please,
And so I was
please,
like,
my
please. So I
wife.
had at one point, I was like, no, no, it's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. But it's ideally, so there's always this gap between the ideal. In my mind, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if the player characters, at first they're just like, this guy's making a run for it, we just got to take him out. Um, if they had more sympathy for the plight of the accountant, and during the session, one player character in particular, I'm like, I think he might just kill the accountant or kill the accountant's wife, which was just another complication that I threw in the mix, trying
Right.
to try to make the accountant seem a little more sympathetic. But anyway, that's that. I wasn't so concerned about that, other than it was just something I could play around with. Like this was, you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I
Yeah.
wasn't married to the idea that they must figure out all the accountant's secrets. If they don't,
Right.
they don't. So
I think it's important that the characters that we play, either as players or the multiple characters that you'll have to take on as a game master, have some kind of motivation that makes sense to you in the moment.
yeah.
And
That was the purpose for the accountant's wife, is that why would the accountant do something that obviously would make his life forfeit? Well, he'd be sacrificing for this his wife, the woman he loves.
right.
That to me made sense. It made it so that the accountant's actions made sense. Otherwise, why would he be here? Like he's got a good job. He's getting paid a lot by the mob. They're going to protect him more than they'll protect probably even the Dawn. Like they're going to protect the guy who knows where all the accounts are, all the money, all the legit business, all the illegitimate business. He
Right.
is super valuable. And so But why would he do that? And I thought, well, let's say he really loves his wife, like he really loves his wife, and his wife's in danger. Well, what
Right.
then he's gonna drop everything to try to help her, right? And maybe
Right.
there's some blackmail that the agents could have, so they wouldn't just go immediately to the Dawn and say, I've
They
got
took
this
my wife.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
they took my wife.
Yeah. And that also, this is the part that I get really excited about, right? So I've got this motivation for this character, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure how that character will seem in play when I'm role playing them. But I'm also pretty sure that there's a reasonable chance that some totally different personality will arise
I've had that
during
happen.
play. But as long as I've got that understanding of the motivation,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have to panic that the words
No,
coming out of my mouth don't match the personality I had
that's right.
prepared or pre-envisioned or just
Yeah,
assumed, right?
yeah.
I know what the person is trying to accomplish. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so they're coming out differently than I expected, but I still know what they
Right.
want to do. But the really cool part is how that spreads out into the people that they're interacting with, right? So they've been approached and browbeaten and bullied and eventually
Mm-hmm.
kidnapped by these evil FBI, right? How far are these FBI agents willing to go to get their payday?
Exactly. Exactly.
So now I
Exactly.
know that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I appreciate what you're saying here, because what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I've got this wrong, is that when preparing NPCs, it's not so much the NPC personality that matters, it's the NPC motivation that matters. And
To me, yeah,
I can see how that would be more useful, because in depending on what the player characters are doing, like if the player characters are being the PCs are being antagonistic, then that would naturally influence the starting uh, comportment of the NPC.
right,
If they're trying to be more conciliatory, then that may just mean that the personality of the NPC is going to be more open to working with them or whatever. Of course, not abandoning their motivations, which I've already said, but I haven't locked in the personality per se. I do this sometimes. I do, depending on what the NPC is and depending on what their motivation is, it may have a direct um, causal relationship with their personality. And there
right,
may be something that, like, for example, if it's their motivation is to, score it big, like some big, they're gambling big on this. They've got all their chips on red or black or whatever the expression is. And they're going to act differently because of that. Like but yeah, I'm kind of rambling.
yeah.
You should cut me off. You should just say, no,
But
that's it. Good. On to the
but
next
it
point.
well, I think I think I feel where you're going. I mean, you've said that the accountant really loves his wife,
Yeah.
and the accountant is the most important figure in the mob. They'll protect him even more than the Don. We know these things. So these FBI agents coming in, they know the risks that they're taking, and they
Yeah.
know the payday that they're expecting, and somehow that's worth it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this accountant's relationship with his wife, it may come up in play. It may not
It may not.
come up in
Mm-hmm.
play. You may imagine, them having quiet time together and always, speaking lovingly to each other, or always,
Mm-hmm.
communicating with subtle touches or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Or they could be a really loud, abrasive
Oh,
couple who
sure.
love each
Yeah.
other very much.
Oh,
Or they
yeah.
could be the kind that they express their love through insults.
Yes. Yes. Probably. That's probably what it is. I like that one.
And what I've found is, depending on what has happened prior to the appearance of an NPC in play,
Mm-hmm.
um, is going to have some kind of influence, subconscious influence or conscious influence on the first words out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not boxed text, and it's not a script that's being followed.
No,
It's interaction now.
it's
It's
interaction. Yeah.
right. We're communicating, and I'm connecting to you. So what comes out of my mouth may not be what I imagined when you weren't here. And
Right.
then, the more that you role play, the more that you're used to taking on these NPCs, these characters that appear for brief periods of time, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think the more you're used to switching in between them, maybe the more sensitive you become to trusting that you can
That you
be
can do it.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just be different. Yeah, yeah. There's cheats. Like I cheat like crazy. So
Okay.
I'll think of people I know,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and I'll just think of, okay, well, this NPC is going to be a lot like this aunt of mine, and I try to pick people with loud personalities for the most part, because it's more challenging, and it's easier for me as a reference point. If they're very much this way, then even though they're not, the NPC is not a carbon copy of them. There's enough there that I can
Yeah.
morph that into the NPC. So I cheat like
And the
crazy. That's
and the players can
important.
recognize the difference between this NPC
That's right.
and
It's
that.
also interesting, those of us that there's probably a fairly high number of us that run games that are avid people observers. Like we watch
Right.
and kind of see, how is this person acting, and I'm always interested. I find people fascinating, and especially their little idiosyncrasies that I think that's kind of what my goal is to have the NPCs be idiosyncratic enough that they don't have to, they can be unique. I'm not, it's not NPC A, B, or C, and I just recycle between the three,
Right.
or just cycle between them. I think that it's good that I met an interesting person, or I saw an interesting person when I was out doing my errands today. So I look at that person. It's kind of interesting
Yeah.
they walk a certain way, or they talk a certain way. Well,
Yes.
I'm always just categorizing that as, oh, that would be cool in a game if I had someone that was like this. Or
That's preparation for
it's
improvisation, right?
preparation. Yeah,
Filing them in.
exactly. I've I haven't forgot. I kept my notes from our first talk, so I have something to look at. But the that preparation for improvisation is so key, to be able to be free enough that you're not, because the issue before I had was that I had such an iron grip on where the players were, that and where, like, their motion and all of that, that I could just do set piece after set piece after set piece. And that's not really improvisation. That's just moving them along. Um, there's a there's not a lot of player agency in that. And so now I don't have those set pieces. A lot more improvisation, a lot more just moving organically through. Like, so for example, you were talking about the wife and how the wife
Hmm.
will act, and how I'm going to portray how close they are. Well, at one point in Fear City, the adventure, the player characters two of them were staked out in front of a house where they
Right.
figured these agents had this safe house that they were holding them. And I kept on thinking, well, I wonder if they're gonna spy on the house, if they're gonna try to get in the house, if they, well, what are they gonna do here? It turns out they didn't do any of that. I tried to give them opportunity, or at least if they chose to, and the player chose not to, and that's totally fine, to
Right.
not take those opportunities. I just want to make sure that he knew he could do other things if he wanted to. Uh,
Or we could look at
what's
that
important
as
about that
not
is,
not
yeah,
blocking them,
yeah,
right? Not making
I'm
them
not
feel like they have to stay in the car or have to be
you
in a
must be
certain
here,
place.
or you must be
Yeah.
there, or now is the time where the classic is, okay, so I've drawn this map, so now you have to be here, right? Because otherwise I spent an hour with my crayons getting my map
For
ready.
nothing.
You better
Right.
be there. And but without forcing people, because I start off the game saying, I commit, I'm not going to move you around. If you're going to move around, it's because you said you've moved somewhere. Well, that immediately makes it much more challenging to have a block of text as an NPC introduction, because who
Right.
knows when they're going to meet the accountant and his wife? They may never meet the wife. I ran the same scenario for an in-person group. They didn't they didn't meet the wife. They were followed the FBI agents the next day, as they were taking the accountant to downtown Miami, going to the various banks as they were doing all these money transfers. And then they did something completely different, where they confronted the accountant and the crooked FBI agent in the middle of a bank lobby, where it was just conversations. Like the FBI, they were crooked, but they weren't going to have a shootout in the bank. And totally different outcome. So it's hard to say, well, and the NPC then says this to you. Like this is how they have NPC dialogue already ready-made for me to use. Can't do that because I don't know when they will meet the NPC and under what circumstances they'll meet the NPC. The first time the player characters meet the wife, she's just been in a nasty car accident. She's
with
in
automatic
the back
weapons
of the car.
fire.
Yeah. And that's where I thought, I think this player character might just kill the NPC. I thought, oh, it's going a little dodgy here. That was the first time.
It's experiences like that, I think, which shifted me away from preparing to improvise a set personality and to start trusting that I could improvise a set personality.
Right. And we just keep practicing.
Stick to the motivation.
Yeah, and just keep practicing it. And every so often we strike gold. Like, oh yeah, this one's great. This one really works. And others are forgettable, throw away. But because we're playing so many characters, it's not a big deal. I'm like, well, that one didn't work. So off with them. And a new NPC comes in.
And you never know who the other people at the table are going to love.
Oh, true.
And I want to keep interacting with that guy.
That's always really? That's fun too, because it's hard to. Well, in my experience, I have yet to find a way to make sure the players love the NPC. Like I haven't found the trick to that where you can just say, this is the one they will resonate with. No, we don't know which ones with whom they'll resonate. We have to be prepared to think quick. And if they don't resonate with this one, that's fine. What I don't want to do is just shoehorn this in where, well, actually you really shouldn't be shooting the hostage in the back of the car. Like, please don't.
Right. Judgment from somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. A booming narrator voice, a la George of the Jungle, comes out of nowhere and says, "No, Brendan Fraser, do not do that." What? Right. No, that's right. Are you arguing with the narrator? No, never argue with the narrator. So I'm trying to avoid that style of play.
Yeah, and so I think this is a perfect place to cut to the first timestamp.
This is excellent. This is excellent because your listeners out there, the viewers, you'll be able to see right away that I can talk a good game. Let's see how well I can run a game, because there's a huge chasm, this gaping maw between my ideals and the actual practice. But we put it out there so that we can get better.
No, I understand the motivation to give that parental advisory or viewer warning.
Yeah, that's right. Mileage may vary. All attention viewers, mileage may vary.
Yeah, and I always feel the same way. That's we care about the play and putting it up online so people can interact with it and take the lessons that they want from it, is not always easy. It's often it's a leap of faith. And so for those following along only using their ears, then we're jumping to a timestamp of 38 minutes and 26 seconds in Fear City Live Play 2 using the Total Party Skills system, which is available on the @Table Runner channel.
Large block V8 rumbles to life.
Let's see what it can do, and then zoom off it.
All right. Peels out away from the the Miami terminal. In the briefcase, a piece of paper with an address. It's a marine salvage yard with an address on South Riverbend Road, which will follow the Miami River. It's only 5 or 6 blocks from the airport.
So the characters have just left the airport. They've got their mission. They've had some hijinks in the New York airport before they left.
Yep.
They had some fun encounters on the plane. But now it's time. Now it's time to get to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess the first question I'll ask is a simple one: the sound effects.
Yeah. Let's experiment. So I was playing around with it. Just went on a free wave file site, and
Right.
I found one where it was just a burnout or a peel out of car. When I listened to that again, though, Anthony, I'd let the sound effect just say enough. I don't have to say peel away from the sound effect did that. The sound effect can be good because it can shorten my narration, and I could use it when I use sound effects in the future, and I think I will. I'll use the sound effects instead of the narration because
right.
Everyone heard it. It's an unmistakable sound. I don't need to say peeled out. Like anyway, I'm
right.
pretty hard
But
on myself.
that's interesting, and that's a good model of the kind of reflection that I like to do. What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
What was my intention for the thing that I did? What effect did it actually have? Am I satisfied or unsatisfied with it? And then I just rinse and repeat through the editing process, because I don't put them up live, right? We record our sessions, and then when I can, I go through and edit them so that we can put up whatever our focus is, whether it's teaching the rules or teaching a technique or demonstrating how a technique worked this time, but the exact same technique didn't work that time.
Oh yeah, good point.
Right, in the same group. There's a variety of things that we put up the actual plays to do, and I can't run the game and do that all live. Right. So I just run the game, and then we go back through and we put in annotations. Mm-hmm. So all the sound effects and stuff that I use, they're all post production.
Oh, it's players post? Don't. Okay. Yeah.
The players don't hear them. Mm-hmm. And so they occasionally will have some kind of prop, or they've been prepared with some kind of environment or some kind of character knowledge that they have, so they have a sense of what that thing is like. But generally speaking, it's only the words that we have. Mm-hmm. And so I like this. The player says, we pull out of there, and you were ready with this burnout.
I was, yeah, I was anticipated they'd be in a car, and so I had the burnout sound ready to go.
Right.
Just had it on a little sound pad, and I could just hit it. Away we go.
Now this triggers some concern in me. Will you then start going down a rabbit hole of collecting more and more potential sound effects?
Your concerns are more than well-founded, because I've already been searching through, and here, see, this is the problem with such a recalcitrant prepper like me, that I'm always looking at, okay, well, this is cool, but what about another sound effect? And what about this? So I have a punching sound effect, like an Indiana Jones style punch.
Right.
And I've got the gunshot, and then I have the shotgun racking, and then I have I have all, and so then but I'll need something like this. Or what about a door, like a doorbell chime, and then I'm like, wait a second, I don't want to be spending my time and effort, mental capital, as it were, thinking all about which button I have to press to get that sound effect, rather than being more reactionary to what's happening in the world, and so it is a bit of a rabbit hole, and I've absolutely guilty of falling into it until such time as I realized I was collecting all of these wave files, and it's now I have to come up with a different folder system, and I'm looking for different namings for the files so I can quickly find them. And I thought, whoa, a little bit goes a long way. The odd thing like that, and peeling out, okay, that's where it makes sense. You can use that. A gunshot where it makes sense. Yeah, sure. So I've limited myself purposely. I've limited myself to 4. That's it. And if
There you go.
if I don't use
Nice.
them, I don't use them. But when I found, and maybe it's just the novelty of it, and the novelty will wear off, but it's an opportunity for the players. Like you heard Nick, after I used that, he was like, nice. But
Yes,
I'm
yes,
hearing
yes.
that as he's in the car. And
Right.
he's the guy in the car saying, nice.
Nice.
Like not
Yeah.
just him out of character saying, ooh, I like that sound effect. And
Yeah.
Nick's a good enough player that I actually do think he was saying that in character.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And of course, we can operate on multiple layers, right? And it could be a great way to let ambiguity be a tool. Who did really say nice? Was it Nick?
Yeah.
Was it character, fingers, or was it both of them at the same time?
Exactly. Yeah. But it was a fun little thing, but I have limited to 4. I'll never have more than 4, because otherwise I know it, and then you get back into that shoehorn. Well, I have this perfect wave file. I'm gonna have to make you do this so that you can, just trying to not be such a control freak about it all. Mm-hmm.
Aren't you sure that you
you
don't want to go to the kennel? You don't want to go investigate in the kennel?
Exactly. The kennel. What about the barber? Oh, yeah. So like that, yeah.
I feel your pain.
That. Yeah.
I feel your pain. And even doing the post production work that I do, instead of trying to do it live, there's still that rabbit hole. During our Alien playthrough, what started out as a very simple thing to help the players get a firm grip on exactly how I was interpreting all the information about Weyland-Yutani and the alien and whatnot. I was putting up basically email excerpts up on the screen, which then over the course of the campaign become email excerpts that are referring to other email excerpts.
Right.
And
There's
then there are
email
graphics
chain here. Right.
Yeah, graphics are appearing on the screen. Like we're hearing outside the ship that some kind of space combat is going on. The players can't see it. The characters can't see it. But you, the viewer watching the video, can see my limited stop motion graphics having this battle play out in some small amount of screen real estate.
Got it.
Or a corpse hanging from steam pipes down this long dark tunnel. And if you really look, you can see him in there. But if you're just listening to the video, you'll never know. It's like, why did I do this? Why was it necessary?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it wasn't.
And how much time did it take? And those are good questions to ask, especially when trying something out new, like trying a new technique, like the sound effect thing. Is the payoff worth the price? Like it takes a lot to do. Is it worth it? Is it your time better spent doing something else?
Right. Exactly. So back into this clip.
Oh yes, here we go.
Seems like we have where we need to go, guys. Manfred, there's a map in there, right? Is there a map in the sun visor there?
Let me see. Ah,
Yep.
there it is.
Greater Miami
All
area
right.
map, falls.
Let's see.
You're the co-pilot, man.
You're holding it upside down. You're holding it upside down.
No, it's right side up.
Oh.
The ocean's this way.
Wait. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right, it looks like we...
The pistol in the briefcase. Put it in my jacket.
All right, we take our 3 exits down. Bear right, and it looks like the go down 4 more lights. Second place, all the way at the end.
All right, here we go.
All right. So I think this is a feature of some of the role play that you're trying to develop
Very much
in the group to make it a habit and make everybody comfortable with it. So could you walk us through what we just saw?
So what you saw there is me trying really hard not to jump in and start saying things. And that was that for most of the session. And in fact, my favorite part of the session where we went for almost, it felt like 10 minutes and I said nothing.
Right.
And it's great. That was phenomenal. So what's happening here is the players, again, I'm not moving the players. So I'm not just saying you drive down the, mostly deserted late night streets of Miami, arriving in front of a boat salvage yard. I could have done that, but instead of doing that, I had the players describe, or according to our style, the players are invited to come up with things, invent things in the scene that would make sense. This is 1975. How do people get around finding their way around? Of course, the doors, the glove box of the sun visor, there are all these
Somewhere
maps.
there's a map. Yeah,
exactly. Now, if I really didn't want them to have a map, I wouldn't have said a greater Miami map. I would have just said a map of Disney World, from the opening week of Disney World falls into your, like, it's useless.
or the Florida,
But we're trying
Florida state map.
Florida state, or it's a map for Louisiana or Atlantic City or something, or it's like the boroughs of New York. Well, this is useless to it, but I'm trying not to do that. It makes sense to me in the moment. It makes sense to everyone watching that, yeah, there'd be a map here. This was a car that was put there for them to use. It was called ahead by their boss to say, yeah, we'll have a car there waiting for you. It has a map. It's a quick thing that a player invented, and then the other players kind of play off it a little bit. So you heard one player saying, "Oh, you're holding it upside down, right?" And he's trying to play into his character, who was a former professional boxer, and he's not the sharpest of the party. So he's gonna be a little slower. He's playing that up. And then Nick does a great job of playing off something, a small thing I had said. It's not too far from the airport. And so he says, yeah, it's 3 exits down or 2 exits down, take a right, 4 lights, and it's right there. Perfect. And then from there, it can just go into it. And frankly, I'm not referencing their actual location on Google Maps the whole time that they're moving. It's not as pivotal to me. It's relatively close, so they're not going to have to drive hours to get there. That's all that matters. And I thought the players did a really good job there of, playing off each other. I didn't say to them, I didn't have to describe the interior of the car. You said, I pull down the sun visor. Yeah, there it is. There's a map right there. Just like in some of the games that I've watched of your group, where there's like the fireplace poker, or there's stuff there. It's of course it's there, right? That makes sense. It's there.
Cool. So they interact, and this a question I've got before we go back into the clip is, how much time was spent introducing the characters to the players? When we start out, they don't.
Sure.
I think this was Nick's first time.
It was Nick's first time playing. That's something that I would like to do more of. I'd like to do more of the either one-on-one sessions with the player, which we've experimented a little bit, where we get a chance to play through the reasons why the character has the motivation, or maybe get glimpses of their motivation because of some things that they're doing. I really liked how you did that with the Cthulhu game, where different characters had their own genesis, their own introduction, not all at the same time, and that would be more helpful. As far as this one went, I had pre-gen characters with just a job description, and according to the system we were using, total party skills, which is a great system, really like it. Using that system to have all of the characters' skills available, and then inviting the players to think of their own motivation, their own secret, which they would tell me, or in some cases they don't tell me, but that's fine. They have to be thinking about this. I've got some, especially in the mob, we kind of expect that you're doing something else on the side. Like what else is that?
Right. We see
And
this, I
then
think, pretty heavily with the Tino character.
very much so with Tino, very much. See, Tino's got, and that was his thing. He wanted to, that's the kind of character he chose to play. That wasn't prescribed for him, and it just kept getting that way. He was playing an addict, essentially,
Right.
which is an interesting challenge.
Action junkie and an addict.
Yeah, action junkie, and really a lot more morally ambiguous than the former champ boxer, he's got a little more morals to him.
Right.
Not him, not Tino. Tino just wants to get paid.
So it's cool. All right. So they follow these directions. So like you said, we could have you get in the car and pull up to the arena. We can completely
we could just
compress time
fast
to
travel.
zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole minefield, this fast travel thing, because sometimes I'm like, this isn't the interesting. We're not taking time out of our busy lives so that we can role play the drive from the airport. But if something interesting is going to happen, or if it's a chance for the players to have their characters interact with one another, then maybe there should be the option, at least for some of the mundane driving, traffic lights and traffic and all of that, or whatever the setting demands. I mean, in the Aliens game, I imagine that you probably aren't role playing through the
hypersleep,
endless truckers in space thing, hyperspeed. Like you're not going to role play every bodily function that your character has. That seems silly to me. But at the same time, if there's too much compression of travel, then there's not that time, that sense that the world is big. The world becomes so small that it's just what is that called? The 5-room dungeon technique. But
it's that. Yeah.
It's the whole world, but all that really matters are these 5 rooms. And there is something interesting along the way. So I want to leave space for that, but you'll see that eventually you pull by eventually the car comes around to where the salvage yards is, and we're not going to go real time through the whole thing.
But they have enough time to communicate with each other. They have enough time to experience the car,
and have some Miami, the heat, but also a little bit of that banter. I like the banter between player characters. What we're trying to do is we're trying to introduce in that banter the concept of, it's not just dialogue. Please remember your character's position in the fictional world. So maybe they're got their arm. Describe that they roll down the window and put their arm out. So we can all picture that. That's something that because we're trying to introduce some motion to the scene, not just dialogue. Dialogue's great, and we want it. And I want good dialogue, of course, and the players are great at the dialogue thing. But if it's just dialogue without that touch point of the physicality of the character in the fictional world, then it risks becoming talking heads instead of people barreling down a dark Miami street at 70 miles per hour in a strange car. There should be
no one's really imagining anything. Yeah,
exactly. We're just thinking what we're going to say next instead of what is the character going to do next. And I want to marry the two as much as possible, that dialogue and action, into each player's turn, so that we're having some banter back and forth. But I also reach into my jacket and pull out a cigarette. Oh man, I'm so glad I'm out of the airport. Now we can, just something that makes it so that, because we're all trying to imagine this, and I find it much easier to imagine when players remember, and myself when I remember, to mention some physical thing. Like that's what we're working on. It's a work in progress, people. Yeah.
So I was going to ask this question later, but I'm going to ask it now. Mm-hmm. So all of that intention to imagine and to contribute to other people's imaginations through what you say and what you do in character? This is actually two questions. Is that intention coupled with wanting to experience the world through that character lens we talked about last time, as the in character as character perspective? Is that the goal, or is the goal more, let's say, cinematic in nature, where you are inviting others to paint a picture for you and you're repaying the favor by helping to paint the picture for them, right? So we're imagining things not through the eyes of the character, but we're imagining it more third person, right? A view
like
of the scene,
the camera floating over the head, kind of right behind our shoulder, looking
or
down.
whatever. Yeah,
I think probably a blend of the two. I don't see the two as being completely mutually exclusive.
No, there's going to be periods where
there's going to be periods, yeah.
But as a group, what was the intention?
I think that as a group, that's a really good question, because I wonder if everyone's answer would be the same. And I wonder,
if you haven't talked about it, probably
if we haven't talked about it, I don't think it would. Our intention really was the first. It was to experience the world in character as character, and not. I say that, but then I'm second guessing myself, Anthony, because a lot of the characters' actions, the way they're describing themselves, they're using reference points that are more cinematic. So they're thinking more, and it might be something that does not.
He does this, or character name does this. And
yes. Now, if I had if I had my druthers, showing how old I am, druthers, who says that anymore? But if I had my way. Speak normally here, Chris. Come on. If I had my way, I would say we're trying to experience the world in character as character, but we're on top of that experience. We're trying to have it be the most dynamic day in that character's life. Like, so it's
right.
It's, if I were to try to marry those two, because I think I understand the distinction that you're making.
Yeah.
I would say, if this isn't just a regular day in this character's life, this is the most important at this point with what's going on, the shoe found in the wall. That is the most important thing that has ever happened to you. Well, there's going to be a more cinematic feel to that naturally, because this is not the dailiness of living. This isn't just scratching to get by every day, a day like every other day. Oh, it's just another Tuesday. No, this is unlike that. So there is perhaps that element of cinematic in the sense of, this is something that is dynamic. This is a big deal. It's not just a run for the canister of milk or whatever it is. It's something more than that.
So the players are encouraged, or feel encouraged, or you have talked about as a group being more dramatic.
Yep. Yeah, having it be so when you're absolutely, we have. So this is now I'll qualify that, because I tend to equivocate everything, but that's why I'm not a good guest. I really appreciate you having me on again, but the problem, what we don't want to do is we don't want to dictate what the player is going to decide to do with their character. That is 100% their domain. I have no control over it. But we do start off with the idea of, if you were thinking of this, like if this, take a step back, if this wasn't for lack of it, if it was a kind of a cinematic thing, or if it was something that was an adventure, or the most dynamic day in your life, then how would that character act in that? Like, you just saw the aliens invade, you just saw the xenomorph jump through the crew chief's chest, or erupt through it. What is that? Try to think. There's got to be some reference point that you can think of. Well, what would that look like? And how would I react to that in that moment? And bring some passion to it. Like, you're not acting it, but try to describe your, maybe in a horror setting, you start to shake a little bit, or you're like, I just need to, and I can't remember his name, but one of your players, well, actually all of your players have done this, but they're role playing out their loss of sanity. It's not just the the role. The role is important, but they're role playing it. They're describing what their character's doing and how this has affected them. And when they describe that, they're not just giving an interior, like an inner monologue. They're describing how they're moving differently, how they can't handle it anymore. They're angsty, or they're describing that as their character in the world. And I do think that is the intention, is that, experience the world, but with a little bit of that cinematic flair. Like, you're going to do something pretty cool. Let's try to do something pretty cool. Most of us would just call the police. Like, okay, well, that's the end of the story. No, I mean,
the 2 panels. Yeah.
The 2 panels. Problem. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's not my problem. I'm just going to walk away from this.
Roll credits. Okay. Yeah. So that's and so the second part of that question is then, have you talked about ways to realize that? Like, I've played with people who will swear up and down it always has to be first person. Right. So then other people in that very same group will find it to be discordant if I say, I put my arm out the window. Right. Because I am probably not giving that much attention. I'm certainly not announcing to the world, you know what, guys? I'm putting my arm out the window.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a dialogue. You would say that if you're in a car with someone, you'd be like, guys, I'm putting my arm out the window. I'm like, no.
Right. But it's totally normal interaction between player and game master to process statements.
Yes.
So
you have to. Yeah. You have to. I started off saying that I don't really care if it's third person or first person, but the more we've tried to be in character and experience it, the more first person makes more sense. And it is more, or at least we have found that it's less discordant to just say, I put my arm out the window, is just describing your character as doing this. Now,
that's doing the action.
You just that your mileage may vary, but as we try to do this, and we try to limit the amount of in character or out of character commentary to the absolute minimum. We're trying as much as possible to get all of that out. And so in that sense, it does make a little more. Now, we've run into the problem. Well, what about me? Because if I'm running the game and I have multiple characters, and especially if I have multiple NPCs, and I can't say I anymore, because which one am I talking about? If I had one NPC, then that'd be okay. But if I have multiple NPCs, I have to put in the third person, so that it's clear for everyone else who I'm referring to in that particular moment. But as a character, my goal is, when I play in a game, is to say I, and then use that consistently. Consistency is the real problem here, but that's the intention.
Yeah, within limits, because as the game master, you're going to be speaking from the perspective of an NPC, but you're also going to be speaking as a description of the world, or the operation of the character's senses. So you need to be able to have some freedom to move around.
You do.
In how you describe and how you narrate.
Yeah.
And then we as players, if some kind of intention has been made for how we're going to communicate with each other, and we understand what the end goal is of that communication, then we start to be able to recognize when I put my arm out the window is dialogue and when it's not.
Yes. It's such an important distinction. When you're playing like your Call of Cthulhu game, and our games and other games I've been in, this requires that everyone start off with the understanding that you do not have the luxury of checking out in between turns. You have to be 100% engaged. You have to be an active listener on everyone's turn, because you have to be able to distinguish between when I'm saying something to you and when I'm describing my actions. And the only way to do that is to really pay attention. if we were playing in a style where you could check out in between combat rounds or something like that, you could just, well, it's not my turn, so I'll just wait until it's my turn again. And then it's okay for me to just say, where is everyone again? Or okay, describe that for me again. We're trying to avoid that. And that means that, speaking to this discussion that we have as a group, what is the social convention at the table? What are we going to say? What's our social contract? Well, the social contract in our games is you will be in character as much as you possibly can the entire time. And that means you have to pay attention to everyone else's turn. They will be telling you where they are. And you can't just ask the George of the Jungle narrator to remind you where everyone is. If you're not paying attention, you will soon be lost. And the corresponding to that, and this is what we've invented this term, and I understand now there's other terms for this, but so we're not perhaps as original as we had once hoped, but this anchoring idea, which was just a way of saying, look, it's not in your turn. You should, if you have dialogue, that's totally up to you. In your turn, though, you should have some kind of statement of your character's physical location or action in the world, or some gesture or something like that they're doing with their body, some kind of embodiment of the character that's done via your description on your turn, which allows everyone around the table or an online gathering, everyone can hear that. You're telling everyone else where you are at all times, every time it comes around to you. And that, if we don't agree to that, then very soon the ambiguity of my location or your location or someone else's location, it snowballs, it compounds and compounds until everyone is kind of fuzzy as to where's the car, where am I, where's the house, what's going on, where are you going, and we're trying to avoid having to pull right out of the immersive in-character experience to reset the world. You're here, you're there, you're here, that is really antithetical to what we're driving
what
at.
you're going
we're trying
for.
to be in character the whole time as the experience.
So for me, the way I've come up thinking about that is imagination, like the persistence of imagination, right? The person who checks out in between turns may not be imagining anything at all. They're
Probably
listening
not
to what the actions are, and they're considering what a proper reaction or interaction or separate action should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then they submit it. It gets accepted and processed, and then they wait for their turn again. Maybe not imagining anything at all, or just imagining moments of it. Right. I think that's interesting. And so it would take that person effort to remain focused enough to actually be imagining visually or otherwise, right, constantly through play, because they've never developed that capacity to the point where it just seems natural.
And it is something that I think can be developed. It takes a lot of effort, and it does take consistent practice, and that's what we're doing. We're just making our practices public. This is what we're trying to do. Each time we're trying to get a little better at it. We're learning from our mistakes, what worked and what didn't work, and we're tearing apart our own game sessions to take a closer look at, okay, here's a spot. I love the timestamp idea where you go through, okay, here's where I messed up, or here's what was going through my mind here at this very moment. Because I think that's helpful for those that are either new in the hobby or just interested in getting better, or like we are, not that we arrived at any, we're not in the Shangri-La. We haven't found utopia. It doesn't actually exist, but we're just trying to get better. But understanding, well, what was I thinking about at this moment? And I have this decision tree, and where am I going to go with it? Yeah, it's a challenge, but we're really having a lot of fun with it. It's very enjoyable to stretch and you can stretch, try new things, and not everything, like the sound effects, not everything's going to be a keeper, but every so often you stumble across something that's worthwhile.
Right on. Okay. So let's then transition into the Call of Cthulhu
Yeah, absolutely.
campaign. And because what I'm really interested in is, I hate to use the word normalizing, but anyway, normalizing analyzing your play. We've been doing it for
more people should do
doing
this.
it for a long time, and we think it's pretty helpful. So, but sometimes you need help because you're inside it. You know what you were thinking in that moment, but someone else watching it will just assume that you were trying to shoehorn your story in or whatever. Like when I'm playing Star Wars and there's a coincidence, I think a lot of viewers will say, well, that's his story.
Right.
But for me, mechanically, the process is I'm playing Star Wars. That genre requires coincidences. So in this moment, is there a coincidence that I could bring in here? And right? They're going to talk to a smuggler. Well, it should be that smuggler. Coincidentally, and so there's no story involved.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So, is there a particular one you wanted to look at?
Any of them. I whatever one you. What was the? Oh, let's go with the most recent one. Let's go with the most recent then. Any of of those would be fine.
All right. So this gives us some world creation stuff. I don't describe the house except for the 3 window panes.
Right.
Because that's my first clue that we're going to be meeting the professor.
Okay.
Is that sentence. So I have from this point to when the door opens to
create the NPC.
Create the professor.
Awesome.
Okay, so this is from session 8. This is Agent Thornton, having had kind of a rough experience with some psychologically draining moments, deciding he needs some help.
I'm going to try and cut through as much of the neighborhood as I can to get to campus as quickly as possible and head to the on-campus house where I know my professor has a residence.
Sure. And it is cold, and there is a dusting of snow everywhere, and there's a glittering of ice on the very tips of the trees. It's not uncommon for this much winter in November, but at the same time it feels early, and you can feel it in your bones, right? You can feel the hard, crisp sound of your shoes against the sidewalk, right? Grit and grass and fallen leaves. And the walk, it's somewhat soothing, but there are moments of inexplicable heart palpitations, or maybe not inexplicable. Maybe that sign of stress and tension, right? But far above the level of activity that you're asking of yourself to walk to your professor's house. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure that some people listening to that part will be wondering why I'm role-playing Brian's character.
Oh, yes. Yeah. With his heart palpitations and the, Yeah.
So how did that strike you as a viewer?
What I liked about that was I liked how you described it's not just how things look. I like how you from someone who lives in a place where we get cold weather, the crunch of the snow underneath the shoes. That is it's not just the that hoarfrost on all the tips of the trees, and those kind of descriptions I think are really helpful. I also really like the description of the walking on the sidewalk. because that's it's just a reminder to everyone that there's some motion happening here. The coldness around you can kind of feel that. So I like that a lot. And because I only knew this because you just told me in our brief break that this is also a chance to provide good context for the player and buy yourself just a little bit of time to create the professor out of whole cloth, which I understand. Are we going to have a chance to watch that as the professor is introduced? Because that's
Yep, we can watch that. Yeah,
let's watch that, because this is perhaps really helpful for those of you, like all of us have had, where players surprise us with a person that obviously should be there in the world, but I haven't thought of them and I need them now. I need them right now. So
right.
how is that going to, how does that work? How are we going to do this?
Okay. Yeah. So just a little bit of inside baseball or whatever. What I like to think of it as how is my driving, right?
Mhm.
He's made a sanity check, which is a mechanism for Call of Cthulhu, and he has failed it. The character is affected, but the way that he and I have agreed to play is we want to really
Mhm.
minimize the disruption of
Mhm.
rolling and communicate more in code, a language of play, right? So we're operating where he knows he needs to roll sanity if I say it's too much.
It's too
When
much, right?
when he hears that phrase,
Mhm.
he'll roll sanity and he'll tell me not I succeeded or I failed, but he'll start describing
Mhm.
a fear reaction if he fails, or a more of a marshaling of his willpower if he succeeds.
Right.
Then I'll
I did
take
notice
those.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here he's failed. How can I communicate to him as the keeper what level of stress he's under?
Right. Right.
So I'm
Right.
taking on the role of his bodily sensations.
Yes. Yeah. And that's hard. I haven't, in our style, I haven't figured out how we're going to do this. We've had some conversations about it. How do you in our, we call it 4D. How do you 4D a failed sanity check or a magical compulsion or something like that without me telling the player character how he's feeling? Um, we haven't figured that out, and then the most, perhaps the simplest solution will be the one that works, where it's just I take over the autonomous body functions. So heart pounding in your chest, like
Right.
in your ears, you can hear you can hear your heart beating in your ears, or you're having it's hard to swallow, or you have your mouth is dry,
Dry. Yeah.
like that kind of. Then maybe that would be okay. It would be better in what we're trying to get to, is we're trying to have the player take all of that, but you'd still have to communicate to the player. You'd have to somehow say this is because of the gradations of failure. So
Right.
it's wearing hard on you, but it's not. So as I listen to that clip, I hear, oh, the cool air cools your, it's calming, that cold air entering your lungs, it's bracing and uh, invigorating in a sense. But at the same time, you're not completely okay. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
How
What
does
we're
that work?
trying to do, our solution to this, which may not be a solution, but our attempt is, we're trying to use a system where it's pretty clear if it's a failure, a barely, like almost got it, but not quite, or just made it, or outstanding success, something along those lines, where the maybe even a quick reference, like you used coded language with it's just too much,
Right.
or maybe there's an opportunity for other types of coded language where it's a trigger so that the player can know, oh, this is really bad. Like it's
Right.
really bad. The doom approaches, whatever it is. And so then they can say, I'm hyperventilating. I, I break out in a cold sweat, even though I'm standing out in the frigid air. Like I just can't.
Right.
So we're trying to find a solution to that. I don't have one, but that's what we're trying to suss that out.
Sure.
It's a challenge for sure.
And
I like
it
the
can be a
idea
little-
of coded language though. I like that, where it's like, okay, this trigger, when I say this, that means this. We've tried that a little bit. And the problem is that everyone has to be very on point to hear because if they don't catch it, and I think in one of our previous conversation, you mentioned that you had given that hint that to the player, and the player just didn't quite hear it at that moment.
Right.
So there's some pitfalls there.
The coded language blended too well into the rest of.
Yeah. Well, you're a really good narrator, so it just goes right. I'm like, oh, this is narrating well.
Yeah. So we've tried with, like, there's a small, it's just a really small chart of physical effects that go along with certain amounts of sanity loss.
Right.
So, I could say you're feeling nauseous, and the player could look at the chart, find nauseous, and say, "Oh, I lost 2 points of sanity," and then we don't have to talk numbers.
That would make sense. Mm-hmm.
Or I could somehow signal that they lost 2 points of sanity, and then they could pick from.
They could do the nausea. Yeah.
Either way, we're paying attention.
Yeah, it still requires attention. And we don't have the silver bullet to fix this one. This is something we're still struggling with. We'll hopefully get to. I think that's also something. The more that your players, these are gentlemen that you've had playing in games for a long time, or is it
the guy who plays Alfred Smalls?
Oh, that guy's awesome.
So this is the first time we've ever played together. So I'm just learning.
Oh, really? He's the older
plays.
guy, the dealer of antiquities.
Right. He's the antiquities dealer. Yeah.
Oh man, he's awesome.
Ivan and we've been playing together for years, and so we have a very comfortable shorthand, right? So we're watching each other. We intentionally have ourselves farther away from the camera, so there's more body language. Because that
helps a lot. Yeah.
Right. We know that there's going to be body language as a part of the role play. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. So we have an established role playing relationship. Brian Courtmarsh and I are just developing one. He's learning what I'm doing, and I'm learning what he's doing, and we'll let that develop naturally. Agent Thornton here. This is Brian Gregory. He and I have been talking RPG topics for a decade now. This is our first time to role play.
Oh, no kidding.
Together.
No kidding. Because the reason why I ask is because I wonder if I wonder if it's something that becomes more second nature the more that we know the more games that you run with the same individuals, or even the same characters. The longer that character exists in the campaign, the more at our fingertips some of these tools are. So I know when I can hear there's a difference here in the tonality of your voice. I can hear there's something different in the description, and so I can be keyed in on it a little better the more familiar I am with the player.
Right.
Or even
I think that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a challenge of one of our kind of one-shot practices is it's hard. We don't see a lot of that. What is happening though, as we switch between game systems and we switch between settings and all of these things with these short games, is we're becoming more comfortable with each other as I have a little better handle on how Rick is doing things. I got a little better handle now on Max, and I'll for the next time I'll know a little bit more about how Nick plays, and I can play off that. We ran into this problem. Anyone who's been unfortunate enough to watch some of our earlier games, we just talk over each other the whole time. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours of us just stepping all over. It's like a bad couples dance. Like we're just stepping on each other's feet the whole time. And it was a disaster. We kept on, okay, is it my turn? Is it? And so we've been, that's becoming less and less of a problem the more that we get used to one another. Sure. I still suffer from it because I just take way too many turns, and it's a problem and everyone knows it's a problem, and it's become a bit of a meme. that if there's ever any silence, then it's just immediately Crispy's turn. Like, well, he just went, and he's like, oh, it's my turn again. And so like I'm working hard on that. I'm really trying to be better.
But I think this is interesting because
yeah,
in this second Fear City, you were very clear and minimally intrusive with what scene it was, right?
Yes.
Back at the house, right?
Yes, that's what I was trying to do. Yeah.
In front of the safe with the acetylene torch. You know, I think these things were really important.
It was. I try, and that, now that's an interesting thing that happened. And it's actually, well, much like when you're doing a one-on-one session, when the party starts to divide and split up the party and do different things at the same time, there's a whole set of new challenges that arise, but there's also some opportunity because now we're no longer as worried about, okay, well, I've got 4 players here. Who's going next? Are we going to be talking over one another? No, there's just one, or there's 2, and the challenge from my perspective is I have to make sure that I'm dividing up the time such that it makes sense. Now, this introduces timeline violation problems. But some of that we just kind of hand wave. But it was what I found worked well in that instance is that when I went back to a player, because we're going, at the salvage, on the yacht trying to break into the safe. I tried to include enough detail there that everyone's clear. Here's where we are right now on the side of the road, Miami at night at a payphone. Like that's okay. Then Phil knows that's me, right? That's
right.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
And that's all you need. Yeah,
it's all
it was really good.
Just need a little thing, and away you go. Yeah,
you had identified something you didn't like, and you came up with a solution for it, and you implemented it, and it worked. And so then it highlighted this other issue, which was timeline. Like we spent hours watching the house, and they just searched the yard, but
they just searched the yard. Like,
but I think searching the yard is about the same amount of time.
It probably, in my mind, it is.
And the amount of time to cut through the steel. I mean, I didn't have as a pure audience member, I didn't have any problem with the timeline. I thought that was really nice. But but the other thing about switching between groups, like I heartily endorse splitting the party.
Oh, me too.
I love it.
Yeah. I do too. Yep.
I feel, well, I can't physically juggle, but it feels like juggling to me, and I really enjoy it.
It's a wonderful challenge.
And it gives everybody, including the game master, in the way that you're playing, right, the opportunity to shift between pure audience and role player audience, the participatory audience, and I think that gives us a chance to rest and reset and make our imaginations more vibrant. But it also builds that, send me in, coach, that feeling of
that anticipatory, like, I can't wait till it's back to me. I've already thought of this, and I'm going to do this, and they're engaged. Now, it doesn't give license to stop listening to what the other players are doing, because
in fact, it requires you listen.
It requires that. You have to be hearing that, so that not so that you can metagame it, no, so that you know where you are in relation to them. So you're not going to suddenly teleport yourself to right next to them, because from their description, he's several blocks down the road at a payphone. You can't just talk to him in dialogue, because he's not going to hear you. So you have to, but it is that pause that refreshes, that just brief, catch your breath enough that when it comes back, okay, now, all right, I've processed what's happening in the world around me. I'm still not sure what to do. So I know my turn's going to be short, or I've got a plan. I'm going to do something with this.
Right.
So that's a good party. Yeah.
That's a good
Put on your big boy pants, split the party. It's it's a great challenge.
So that's a good segue to what you had asked. How long do I have to prepare for this NPC that I have never considered?
Yes. Happens to us all the time. I like this character a lot. So yeah, this will be good.
So he has just said, I'm going to cut through the back alleys or something like that to get to my professor's house.
Distantly.
as if it were real, but knowing it is not. You can hear hoofbeats.
Glancing over my shoulder, pulling the coat tight, check the gun in my pocket. Before I
Everything's fine.
Before I go up the little short flight of steps to the front porch, I glance up and down the street. Mount the steps, and then just start banging on the door.
Sure. Right next to the door, of course, there's a bell, and there's a brass nameplate, listing, Dr. Carol Spinnaker.
Great name.
So that name didn't exist before I said it. I was totally blank.
I like it. It's great. It's great.
I have a history of not being able to think of names on the fly. And my solution was to persist in not writing down names, but to just keep putting myself in that situation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But at this point, I don't know if Dr. Carol Spinnaker is a man or a woman.
Okay.
And the porch light is on, right? He is, of course, an academic and burns the midnight oil pretty much every night. So now I know.
Now you know. Now it is. Yeah.
One sentence, Carol Spinnaker, and I'm thinking, okay, gender neutral name, man or woman?
Yep.
I don't know. He stays up late. Okay, now I know.
Exactly. Now he is. Yeah.
Staying up in his study, which is right in the front of the room, right? With a 3-pane, arched window that gives him a commanding view of the street. But unlike anybody else who would fill that room, right, his desk does not place him with his back to the window, right, so he could spin around in his huge chair and stare out at the world. His desk is completely at the other end of the room, with his back to the wall. So as you pound on the door, it doesn't take him very long to get up from that position, step out into the hall, and you can see a shadow on the inside of the glass. Right? And he opens the door unconcerned, and he moves out into the small porch area, and you can see him, he's got his pipe in corner of his mouth, and even though he's inside, he still has his hat on. He still has his overcoat on as if he's forgotten to take them off. And he opens the door, and there's a smile, but also a sternness, right? That line between professor and student, right? Alex, you're here late, he says around the pipe. So about this point, I know who Carol Spinnaker is.
Right. Makes sense. And I liked how the player in that instance, he just describes his motion. I walk up the short steps to the front door, knock on the door.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. Were there steps there? It's like, oh, describe the steps for me, Anthony, please. You don't have to. It's steps to the front door. Go knock on the front door.
Yeah. He and I had looked at one picture of a house in Boston because it came along with his character sheet. Right. I live in this real world house on this real world street in Boston. And so I don't have to bother describing. He knows what the architecture is like in that part of town.
It's nice to have some reference points. I agree. That's nice. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he created all of that. So I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I like when players do that. I like when they feel confident enough that they can create these contacts that would make sense. And he did a really good job doing that. And I had a question for you, because I know now that you've added the hoof,
yes,
the hoof beats in post. Is that something that is like we were talking about using coded language? Is that kind of code for him, his sanity eroding, like when he hears the horses? Is that something?
It's
can you tell me that without spoiling things, or is that a spoiler that he has a
tarot card on on which
Yes. Yeah.
is this knight, the Knight of Swords, which has it's spoken to him at this point in play. It spoke to him. Its head turned and it spoke to him. And so that was like the last straw. That was a cliffhanger ending.
Oh,
and
right.
So this one starts with him still sitting in the car, still holding the card, and he goes to his professor.
Right to the professor.
Because he's in a state of panic. So I don't know if I'm losing my mind. And then of course something even weirder is going to happen during that conversation.
Right.
And so that sound is not so much of him losing his sanity. That's the magic at play in this.
Okay. Right. Because that would be something I would have that be one of my 4 sound effects. I would absolutely have that. And then I could just adjust the volume so it's really faint. And then without saying anything, I would just hit it. And then the player would be like, wait. So he has that.
Yes, I'd love to be able to do that.
That would be cool. That would be really cool to try.
This campaign has a lot of auditory hallucinations, which I have to describe.
Yes. Yes. And that's fine. I think it's absolutely fine. The faint sound of hoofbeats or it's what? There's nothing there. Look, there's no horses out here. Yeah, I like that stuff. I like that a lot.
So because there's so many details and whatnot, like they have these conversations, and there can be throwaway details that we might not get to play for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And so a big part of my post-production process is how can I make it easier for the player to go back and watch this? Because it's not easy to watch, especially a session that you played in, I think.
Yeah, that's why God created 2 times speed. So you have to you have to watch your own sessions at double speed, otherwise it's just unwatchable. Yeah.
So I put in props. So there've been newspaper reports and images of houses or cars or bits of technology.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful for players to look back and see, oh, right. Okay. That reminds me. Yeah, it's useful.
And I'm using a voice changer when certain, not every NPC, but when certain NPCs speak, I give them a completely different voice.
See, I worry. I looked into it and I almost went down that rabbit hole, Anthony. I was very close to doing all of these voice changer things and having the app, and I'd already downloaded not 1 but 2 of them, and I was considering a subscription to the one, and I was, oh boy, and then I had to pull back, like a junkie that I am, had to pull back a little bit and say, just careful, you're getting too out of hand. Oh, it's so tempting.
All right. Should we see the interaction between these 2?
Sure, let's watch some of that. Yeah.
All right. Because then it's not the game master as senses and description. Then it's game master as NPC. Right. Alex, you're here late, he says around the pipe.
I like those kind of details. Speaking around the pipe, that's just perfect.
Well, Professor Spinnaker, if I wasn't in need of some serious advice, I wouldn't barge in like this on your time away from class. But I really need some help right now.
Well, you are welcome. Come in. Looks like you need a stiff drink.
I kind of, to my chagrin, grimace and say, I appreciate the offer, but I think I work as a treasury agent.
It wasn't an offer, and there's no alcohol in the house. I just was observing that you look like someone who needs a stiff drink.
Well, this is during Prohibition, right?
I wanted to make him feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I wanted to lure him in my imagination of how a professor who is also a psychologist.
Oh, right, because he's a professor of psychology. So you look like a man who needs a stiff drink isn't an offer to drink.
Yeah.
Although it could be an offer to drink.
It could have been.
If he had said, just as a curiosity, if he had said, the player, you know, I know I'm not supposed to, but given what's happened, yeah, I'll take a couple fingers if you have a couple fingers of whiskey if you've got them.
Then the answer would have been the same.
Yeah,
I don't have any in the house.
I don't have any. I'm a fine professor, and frankly, Alex, as an agent, you shouldn't be indulging.
Exactly. Yeah, and then because why has this guy shown up? It's way past polite visiting hours.
Yeah, exactly.
And, obviously, he's under duress. He doesn't look like himself. So let's find out how much. So he's poking at him.
Right.
And,
sit by the fire. You look cold. He's got two leather, upholstered armchairs right to either side of the fire for this express purpose.
I'll make my way over to the chair, set my go bag down, kind of take a hesitant moment before I take off my coat, touch the area of the front where the pocket is, kind of knowing what's there and dreading what I'm about ready to tell Spinnaker.
Right.
Because in my mind, I think what I'm about to say, he's going to say I'm crazy.
I like when players say that as a reminder. Like I touch where the card is.
Yeah.
Like I touched my chest. That's what I'm talking about. Little things like that. It really helps. It helps me imagine what's going on here.
Me too. And you can also see Brian cutting his eyes to the side a lot because he's constantly and unobtrusively taking notes. Right, so all the NPC names, where he met them, when he met them.
Mark of a fantastic player. They're taking notes. Like take notes. It's really good.
So when you touch the pocket of the coat to feel the card, it doesn't feel like the card is in there.
I get that wincing feeling you have when there's that drop in your gut. That this key piece of evidence for my discussion is no longer here.
Now, Anthony, in Call of Cthulhu, in this game, the social convention is that players are expected to describe what they're thinking, right? Like that's part of the building of the horror is that, like, so he's describing exactly how he's thinking on the inside.
No, this is an agreement. This is an agreement that he and I have had. Okay. You're free. The way that this rule set is put together, it's put together with a baked in and openly communicated philosophy of use this as you will. So in a rulings over or in the absence of rules sense, which I call roar. Right. So instead of like a golden rule kind of blanket statement, like if you don't like a rule, change it. Right. It's here are the things that make up this game. Like this game includes sanity. Right. And so sanity can be described this way. And these are the degrees of sanity loss. And this is what happens when those things occur. But how you communicate sanity loss or who rolls the dice to determine these things, you have to work that out for yourself, because you can play Call of Cthulhu for humor. It can be really schlocky. You can play it for the violence. You can be shotguns versus shoggoths. Right. You can play it really, really dark and atmospheric. And each one of those decisions will influence how you implement the mechanisms.
Okay.
So in this particular campaign, we're trying to, Zoom call notwithstanding, the fact that we're a million miles apart. We're trying to minimize the disruptive effect of the game system without ignoring the game system. So I'm still rolling dice. You can, like, as I'm sitting here, right? I'm checking the dice, or I'm looking at their character sheets, which are right here, to see their skill level is high enough that in this situation I don't need to call for a roll. They can just do it.
They can just do it.
Right. And so all of that is to help preserve the atmosphere, one, and two, to allow for that uninterrupted imagination so that they can really get into their character and start to feel connected to it. If we were playing for the violence of it, then I'd be super descriptive. I'd be very lurid with bright and colorful details, and I'd build up to now roll, right? And then they would roll, and we would do it that way. So the game itself has advice about these things, but isn't prescriptive about those kind of things. You have to find your way to using.
You have to decide what the tone of the game, then that'll dictate how you interact with the rule set. And yeah, that makes sense. The reason I ask is because one thing we found, like, I don't disagree at all with if you decide that you want to have a game where the players can describe out loud what their characters are thinking and feeling. That's fine. What I ran into in an earlier game is I started doing that, but we were playing with, it wasn't just me and the game master. So, and I wasn't saying just out like I'm feeling the issue was, if playing with multiple players, this is what I ran into. When playing with multiple players, there has to be some kind of clear distinction between what I'm saying out loud and what I'm just saying or I'm thinking in my head.
Right.
So that the other players don't conflate the two and try to speak to something that I only thought. And so that ran into, I was worried that was becoming confusing. Now, I've received some feedback on that particular instance that it wasn't confusing, but thankfully, but I can see how it could be confusing. Not in this case, because like Alex, the character it's clear. He's in a one-on-one session where there's not another player character in the room talking to him. And what my solution to that was, instead of saying out loud what I was thinking, I would just describe actions that would provide hints that this is what I was thinking.
Right.
Because the description of action is a little easier to differentiate from dialogue than inner dialogue versus outer dialogue.
Right. One thing that I end up doing is, if I'm playing with a bunch of characters who are very sharp, like a bunch of con men or something who are used to reading people, then I'll share more of what the character's thinking. They're able to read this, so I'll let them know that I'm clearly building up to something, or I'm about to do something, or it really did. I've got a poker face, but that really did wound me. You can tell. Right? And there's ways you can communicate that.
Sure,
there's a simple description, or by seems like, right, or describing an expression or a twitch or something.
Twitch of an eyelid, a bead of sweat now just above his upper lip. There's something, a sudden twitch. His knee starts, bouncing up and down underneath the table.
So in Ivan's case, you can see that he will start to stammer when things start to build up for his character, and his volume will drop if it's really hurt him, or it will become more strident, and he'll really start to push this denial. Like, this is not what happened. This is not.
Right.
And so it's very clear. We can feel the stress.
You feel it, yeah, and it can be inferred because of how he's behaving now and how he's describing his actions, that he's fraying at the edges, and Yeah, that's it's just it's just an interesting thing to think about. How will how will players differentiate their thoughts that they're I can see how in the atmospheric game that you're running, those thoughts are really important. That the player, what was his name? The actual player, his I have forgotten it already.
We've
I
got
apologize.
Ivan and we have two Bryans.
Brian,
so Ivan and
okay.
Brian play together.
So Brian in this clip where he describes that pit in the stomach you get when you suddenly realize that something's not on you that you expected, and this is an important, really important. We've all felt that, like oh no, where's my phone? Or oh no, where's my wallet? Or where's the keys? And
right,
exactly. He does a really good job of that. And as long as everyone at the table understands, or the virtual table understands that, okay, this is him describing how he's feeling. I don't interact directly with that. I can only interact with how that manifests out that I can see.
Right. That he's nervous.
Yeah. Or he's got something important on his person.
Yeah. And not too long after that in this clip, something very untoward happens. The tarot card behaves in a way that they're not designed to do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And he reacts well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just as a little spoiler, he and I just played the third session after this one, third or fourth session after this one.
Okay.
And this was the first time, and this has been role played meticulously all the way through by Brian. This is the first time that he changed his underclothes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because something gets under his skin.
Oh,
and he initially wants to see where it went.
Mm-hmm.
And then he changes his mind and doesn't look. And he doesn't look for days and days of play.
Oh, wow. That's good.
That's really
good. Yeah, that's excellent. I like that.
And so in the other thread, we have Brian Courtmarsh playing our dealer of antiquity, Mr. Smalls. He started talking to the book because he's a lonely bachelor.
Right.
And I love this ambiguity. Is this a side effect of the book doing something? Because we know this book can do some strange things.
Right.
Or is this just a manifestation of who this man is? I love it. I absolutely.
His voicing of that character is so good. It just brings the character alive when I hear him speaking in that. Like, I don't do voices, so whenever I hear someone that can do voices, I'm just instantly impressed, especially if they can do them very well and consistent.
And consistently,
he's so consistent. That's why I was really impressed with that Brian, with his you don't need it, because this Brian that we've been watching, he's role playing great.
Right.
And he's not doing voices. He doesn't need to. It's fine.
Doesn't need to.
It works. Yeah.
Yeah. So he does a thing where he's got his normal Harvard educated voice, and that will be his normal voice. And then he'll add in a touch of Boston when he's slumming it with his his street level buddies in context. Right. It's kind of interesting. So we get a sense of how he's Yeah. And so all of this, I think, we've got our New York mob accents going on. Right? We can picture these guys in the car.
My wife's Italian. She just
marina.
laughed all the way through that. She's like, hearing you guys try to do your Italian accents is just hilarious. She thought she was like, that was the most fun. She was rolling on the floor laughing. I was like, I'm not sure we were going for that, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
That it happened, right? And it started to feed in.
So, anyway, it was fun. And it was just a fun, could you make a campaign of it? Well, I suppose you could, but it was more just let's have some fun. Does this sound like something most of us haven't played in that type of game? So let's see if it works. We can do. Yeah.
And I think, in this perspective of playing for the experience of the character, right? Then that can become the campaign. I think we normally think of campaigns as like Dragonlance or,
Mm-hmm.
some epic world-shaking problem at the end of the line, and we're going to play for a couple of years building up and getting there. But for me, a campaign is a game where we haven't set any boundaries of time.
Right.
So we've chosen this location. I don't know, maybe these characters, maybe Smalls and McSweeney or Thornton or someone else, so we also have another solo character that's in this campaign as well, but his stuff hasn't appeared yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone will move away from Boston. Well, the campaign will follow them.
Sure.
It's not about solving anything, ending something, starting something. It doesn't have any of that. It's about getting to experience the horrific and awful lives of these characters.
The awful lives of these poor souls that are about to lose all sanity. But it's a good point. Like, most campaigns that I've run or been in, it's just a drawn out James Bond movie. Like, there's some world ending event and there's nefarious things happening, and you're just trying to beat the clock to save the world from this big cataclysmic whatever it is, which is the plot of virtually every Bond movie ever made.
Right.
And that's not really what I'm going for. I'm going for much more what you describe. It's what we're playing is these characters as they experience a fictional world, and that fictional world becoming more and more interesting through the actions of the characters, but without always this big cataclysmic event because who knows, maybe the cataclysmic event's going to happen no matter what. It's a comet, it's a solar flare, whatever it is, but we can still have a great campaign as we follow the careers of these characters through the world, which is what I take from your description. And it's the embodiment of the experience of embodying the character is the real campaign.
The point.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can have missions with these mobsters.
Yes. Yeah.
Forever.
Forever. Yeah. Well into their way past their prime, and they'd still we could still be doing it. So, or they all get pinched and now they're in
they're in jail. Yeah.
They're in jail and they're trying to get out of jail. So we'll see.
They're bartering for cigarettes.
Exactly.
In the Call of Cthulhu campaign so far, from a personal perspective, I think the most cataclysmic event has been the closing of the bakery across the street from Alfred Smalls.
Alfred Smalls and his bakery, and where he hid he went and took the book to the bakery, and I enjoyed that part. I do indulge on the narrative side when it comes to food. I will indulge. My players know that my in-person players, I once spent way too much time talking about a bakery and some sweet rolls, and now it's a bit of a joke that like, hey, what does the food smell like? And I'll go into some big Food Network description of all of the food smells and tastes.
Awesome.
Anyway,
it's
a guilty pleasure.
To memory.
It's a guilty pleasure. Yeah, that's right. Right.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me again.
Hey, this has been great. Thank you very much. I always find our conversations quite enlightening. Thank you for sharing those. I like the questions. They were great. Really got me thinking. I'm going to bring that up next time I run a game. It's okay. What are we doing here? Is it just creating a movie, or are we trying to just experience the world as these characters?
Right. Yeah. Because if so, it changes how we talk to each other.
It does. Yeah, it's true. Very true.
Cool. All right. Well, until the next time, take care.
Thanks for watching.